Okay, so I forgot to show you this token later in this video, so I'm going to show it to you now. This is the store that I've used. You can check out my Zustand store tutorial to check out how everything works. So you should understand this. This is very important. This is how I've configured my Zustand store for this video. So yeah, all right, let's move on. All right, so the last time we completed the Express server. We completed the Express server and I showed you how to set it up with TypeScript. Today, we are going to start with the routers and the basic JWT authentication flow. It does not have... Alright, if you have to know, there are two tokens usually, but I'm just going to use one token because it's not necessary. A refresh token is not necessary for learning how the JWT thing works. So the thing is that our client will ask the server for an access token, which we will attach with every request to let the server know that the request that the client is sending is authorized. This token will have an expiration date. So when the expiration date is reached, the token will no longer be applicable and the client will not be allowed to fetch data from the server. So let's begin. So the first thing that we need to do is add the router. We have not created this router yet, but in Express you can redirect requests to different endpoints of an API through routers. As you can see, the router does not exist right now. So let's go and make a router. Let's go to the source directory. Let's create modules files, and inside this we'll create a auth.router.ts. We'll rearrange this later. In the auth router, we'll have to import the router from Express.js, and we'll create the router by creating the router. Well, it's pretty much simple, instantiating the class. And now we are going to export this router as the default export in this file, so we don't have to import the name of the variable. We can just import the file as the default import. And now router.post login. Login, and let's create a controller for this where all the requests will be reached, but we don't have the controller, so we'll have to create a controller. Auth.controller.ts. Inside this we'll have to export const login controller, which is a function that takes in a request. But first we'll just import this. The errors go away. Now we have imported all our things correctly everywhere. We haven't got the auth router because we haven't imported it from the other routers. Alright, let's import that. Let's go back to the login controller. The request will have a request type from Express. Response will have a response type from Express. So we can let VS Code take care of that. Inside the controller, we are going to return res.send. This is what we are going to send to the client. This is where you define what to send to the client. We are going to sign it to... Wait, what? We don't have JWT. Let's import JWT. Import JWT from JWT. JSON Web Token is the name of the library. Now we can sign, and we'll sign an empty payload, or you know what, let's add test to it. Test.payload. Now we'll add a secret key to it. Let's add a secret key, and that's it. Now we can add an expiration date as well. Let's expire it in 5 seconds so that we don't have to wait for long to see how JWT works. To the client, go to the index file of the client, the main page, and let's import axios from axios so we can make requests to our server now. We'll create a function named getLoginToken, and over here we'll return await axios.post, which will await localhost 2000 where our server is hosted. It will send a post request to this server. Let's stringify the empty payload because we are not accepting any payload on the requests. We are only returning a JWT token from the endpoint. And alright, we have created a state for the token, and we have created a button that will, when we click this button, it will send the request. So it will invoke the login token request, and it will set the token as the token that we are getting from that. Apparently we are not, because what I forgot to do was import the cores from the so that we can allow requests from any client that we want to accept requests from in the server. This is all happening in the server, so we can add our client to it, which is http://localhost to 3000 is our client, right? All right, now let's see if that works. All right, that works. That was the problem. So we hadn't added the cross origin request allower, so we couldn't receive any requests on our server, and that was causing the error. Now we have to store this token in the Zustand store that we created in the first and second episode. You can check it out if you want to learn how that was done. So let's do that. We have to get all the actions from the store and get the token from the custom hook that we created, so that we don't get a rendering error. All right, now that works. Now that works, every time we send a request, it will change the token in our store, and then our component will fetch a new instance of the token so that we don't have a problem. But we have to attach our header. So when we are sending requests to our server, we have to attach the token every time to verify that it is us that is sending the request. It's a verified person. It's a person that the server can trust. Now, the problem is that how do we do that? We don't want to manually attach the token to every request that we send. We'll have to write a lot of code. So let's abstract that. Let's fetch that function into this file so that we don't have to repeat ourselves. Let's import axios from axios. Let's create a new instance of axios, which is done this way. Let's do that with credentials with true. I don't know if we should do that because that definitely is going to cause an error, but we can try. I'm not an expert. Export default axios new that we are going to use in another function. Axios new.interceptors.request.use, and over here we are going to use a config, and this is the configuration of the axios instance, and we are going to change the config a little bit. But before that, to keep TypeScript happy, we are going to return the config. All right, now what do we do to the config? We have to attach the header, right? We have to attach the token as the header. So let's get the token from the Zustand store. As you know, we can get the Zustand store token anywhere in the app. We can just fetch it in any file. It doesn't have to be in the React tree. So let's get the state and let's get the token. And now we are going to get the config.headers and create an authorization header which will say bearer token. All right. Now to verify this request, we'll have to create a new middleware. But before that, let's see if the headers are coming in with the request. Let's just check that out. All right, the header is coming, and that works. And let's check the header. The header does not have the token. Oh, we obviously it doesn't, because we haven't used that instance. We are still using the original native version of the axios. We are not using a custom instance of the axios, this one. Okay, let's import this from the utils.axios, and let's use that instead. And this with credentials is still a problem, so let's see if that works. Okay, yeah, that's causing an error. We'll have to remove with credentials. All right, let's remove with credentials once. All right, let's try it. Okay, yeah, that works now. All right, and as you can see, let's check out the request. All right, now we have the token over here. We have the latest token over here, the same one, as you can see. Verify this token. Let's create a middlewares directory in our source folder in our server. All right, for the middleware, I'm going to just copy paste some code that I have written already because I don't want to write it again. I will explain this to you right now. All right, so we import everything that we need and we figure that out as we write the function. This is a middleware, so it has request, res, and next. Middleware lies between the endpoint and the result that the user wants to reach through that endpoint. So at every request, this middleware is going to run between the user and the result that the user wants to obtain. And when it runs between it, obviously it will verify the token that we send with the request. when the request has been verified, it will call next and it will move on to the endpoint that it wants to reach. But if it doesn't, then it's going to return an error and say that, hey, this is the error, here's the problem. Let's move on and put this between the two endpoints so that it comes in between. Let's create a test endpoint. Also over here, let's edit this error.name equals to token expired error, because the error that we get here will have this. So because I know I have worked in this before. So yeah, let's move on to the require auth and put it in between both of our endpoints. All right, so when the request is received at test, it will first go through the require auth, and if the require auth is passed, then it will move on to this function where it will return res.send end reached. So that means the end reached will be returned to our client as a result. So let's try that. Obviously this will return a new JWT token, so we'll have to make some changes to the graphic interface. We are going to go to index.ts and we are going to write a new function to test our JWT. Let's put that over here and let's create a new state. Let's create a new local state to hold the result that end reached if we reach the end, and if we don't, then show us the error. So let's create that set res, and when the axios request is done, then it will set this res, and let's create a new button to test this. And yeah, we haven't changed the location yet, so that won't work right now, but let's obviously now the request is going to fail because we haven't configured our endpoint, and now it failed again. What's the problem now? What is happening? Alright, see, the JWT expired after 5 seconds. That's why we are getting this error. Alright, let's sign a new JWT using the submit button, and now let's test this JWT end reached, because it went through our middleware and the middleware said, alright, this is a valid token, and it passed it on to our endpoint, which sent us end reached. So now we have a proper auth system configured. That's great. I love you all. Bye bye.